Hello and welcome to RPG Research. I'm Hawk Robinson, president and founder. This is our weekly electronic role-playing game development vision meeting. It is January 2nd, 2021. We survived the year of the confirmed crit, and now we're into, I don't know, the year of blackjack, 21, right? A little optimistic there maybe, but it goes.
Whoopee.
And there was much rejoicing as they ate the minstrels. Yay. So this is, of course, right now we're in phase 2 of working on our online multiplayer turn-based uh, electronic role-playing game that's meant to be controlled by accessibility devices, especially brain-computer interface controls, for the ultimate in accessibility to help people be able to engage in cooperative multiplayer social problem-solving role. And we're chugging along here. If you want to know more about it, check it out at bcirpg.com. All right. Well, welcome everybody. So glad you're here. As is typical after the holiday break, I see that attendance is a little low. It was the same thing with the meeting just before this one. It takes a little bit after the holidays to get everybody back into the groove. If you can fire off reminders to the rest of your team to go, hey, we're back to meeting again. We're back to our normal schedule, so we can get the momentum going. I am posting a whole bunch of, it's also the time of year when I start posting, get, a bunch of new people to help kind of, rebuild the team from whatever attrition has happened over time. So expect in the coming weeks some new people to join the team. Those of you who have been around for this project will be expected to kind of help walk them through and bring them in the process. Nicholas and I will get the back end stuff going. Then we'll kind of fire them off in your direction. They'll show up, and then they'll be needing your guys' guidance as possible. The only way to make this scale is that with each department, the teams help the others come on board. If I have to train everybody like I did you guys, I can't scale because I have to do it across all the different departments. So I'll be leaning on all of you to be helpful to them. And you guys, I'm sure, will be happy to do so. I've seen how you've done with the others. You've done great. But do expect in the coming weeks an influx of, I'm gonna shoot for another 10 team members. And because we're gonna need, besides hands-on coders, we're gonna need QA people, stuff like that, right? As this project gets further along, we need more staff to help keep the momentum going, because otherwise we'll get bogged down just trying to handle the QA and such. So there'll be other roles coming in. So we just want to give you a heads up on that. If you missed our year in review earlier this week, the summary is that our volunteer base compared to 2019 and 2020 grew between 300 to 500%. Depending on whether you count our regular people versus our project-based people. If you include our project-based people, it's more than 500%. But our core people, it grew more than 3 times. We were at about like 35, 40 people, and now we're around 130 plus
Awesome.
volunteers. It's getting really challenging to manage it. That's why we're trying to get administrative staff now to help take over that. Secondly, demand for our programs went up more than 1,000%. Our programs, like the number of programs we delivered, not counting the big events attendees, we increased it about 500 to 600%. So we increased from 2019 to 2020 our program offerings and all these different programs and such five to 6 times as many programs, training, all of that compared to 2019. That still wasn't enough, and because demand was more than 1,000% growth from the year before. That's a nice problem to have. I hate having to turn people away. We've had to turn away many hundreds of people just because we didn't have the trained staff ready yes, we'll take it on. So I hate having had to do that, especially in 2020. But what can you do, right? The problem was everybody was starting to get really overloaded. That doesn't count the key things that we did with the events. So we spent 4 months building the fantasy.network platform. Well, I mean, 3 years before that, I built the movie platform. But from April to July, we extended it to becoming a live event platform. so that 5 conventions didn't have to cancel. Okay, yeah, sorry, Luke. Hope feel better soon. Um, so the events were ZoeCon, which was the first early kind of prototype test to see if we could make this online event platform work. We're also showing it as a demo to Worldcon and Gen Con staff. And darn it. So that was the early prototype of extending. I only had 2 weeks to whip that up. So Ben told me, hey, we need to do this prototype. You've got 2 weeks to do it. What can we cobble together to show proof of concept? So that started in April, and we pulled it off, and it was enough to convince Worldcon to go forward with us so they wouldn't have to cancel the 78th annual Worldcon where they give out the annual Hugo Awards, it's a science fiction writer awards, prestigious award. And so we had several other cons that were used as live test beds. Australia Technorama, Realm Makers, and then finally got to Worldcon and Gen Con, which we were simultaneously the same week. They're off by 1 day because of the time zone difference between New Zealand and Indianapolis. But in the same week, the last few days of July and the first few days of August, we were running events and hosting Worldcon and Gen Con. Now, the Gen Con part, we didn't host the main part of Gen Con. We hosted the Gen Con Film Festival for Zoe and all the others. But that film festival wouldn't have happened without our platform. And Worldcon, we hosted all of it. Worldcon would not have happened without all the work we put in that intense 4 months. At our peak, when all of that was going on between those 2 events, plus on Saturday, we still ran our community drop-in and RPG events that Saturday. All 3 of those happened at once on Saturday. But over those 5-6 days, we hit a peak during Saturday of 20,000 concurrent users per second. That's not 20,000 new users, but in any given second, we had a peak of 20,000 simultaneous different users on the platform. So, not counting the events, we know we directly impacted the lives of about 5,000 people or so in 2020 through our different programs and our online learning and all these other things. It works out to between 3,500 to 5,500 people, give or take, that we can kind of verify we had a direct impact. You add Worldcon, Gen Con, and the conventions, altogether it's over 30,000 lives we had a direct impact on for our programs. Compare that to the previous year, which was around a few thousand. That's mind-blowing, the increase. And then finally, as far as money, by the end of the year, and a lot of it came in towards the end of the year, so we didn't really have, to do all these programs, we really didn't have any money to do it. It was really thanks to wonderful volunteers like you, putting in the time and the effort and everything to make these programs happen. And then people donate after the fact, right? We never get nobody's given us grants or money up front, really, to help us do these things. It's always been, we got to prove what we're talking about. And then people are like, oh yeah, I'll throw in a few bucks here and there. And some people have been more generous. But it's always after the fact. So it's really our volunteers that make this happen. And then fortunately we get money, which then makes it possible for the next year to do more. So this year, so put it in perspective, 2 years ago, 2018, we raised about $2,600. Last year we raised about $4,400. This year it's looking like the total adds up to just under $19,000, which is, a 350% increase from the previous year. It's still tiny compared to most nonprofits our size, and especially compared to helping over 30,000 people, right? That's more than one person per dollar directly impacted. And we're not even talking about the ripple effect, right? Because we know, like our community program in West Central Spokane has reduced the crime rate, because the businesses in the area have reported problems during when other community programs were running. Some of the kids in those programs were out in the street hucking rocks at cars loitering in front of the businesses, things like that. But all of our participants in our programs and during our time, that went away because of our programs in that neighborhood. So we don't know, that's X number of thousands of people in that neighborhood who have benefited from a reduced crime rate because of our program that we can directly link. We had an impact on those kids who we know were getting in trouble before. Now they're not. But it's a soft number, right? We don't really have a hard number there. So the 30,000 plus, that's a hard number that we can point to and go, yeah, this is how many people we know that had direct interaction, etc. But the ripple effect knows. So that just kind of shows that's the impact of what these programs can do. Now, those are all, except for the online platform, those are pretty much all analog things, right? They're heavily dependent on people, and they don't scale on a large scale without more people. But as we work on technologies like this, the ERPG program here, the ERPG, as we get this usable by people, that's something that scales, right? This is something that can ripple out to far more people than we interact with directly, have that benefit. So I just wanted you to take a second and appreciate how great the potential is for help, because that's what we're about ultimately, is helping people, right? The research and the community programs and all of this is about helping make lives better for people around the world. And just wanted everybody just appreciate for a moment that potential here with the project. And so thank you to all of you who have been participating in this, helping spread the word, working on these projects to move these things forward. Couldn't do it without you. And my hope is in 2021, we're going to see, any company that's doing double-digit in growth, everybody's pretty happy with double-digit growth, right? Start getting single-digit, you start to worry about stagnation, etc. But any double-digit growth, everybody's happy. We've been in triple-digit growth since we incorporated, 2017, each previous year. So like our first year, 2017, we raised like $300, right? So each year, we've been 200 to 300% growth in fundraising or more, growth in volunteers, right? When we started in 2017, we had, a handful of volunteers, and then that's just kept, doubling, tripling, each year. And then our impact, the number of people we've helped, has done the same. Now, that's not going to be that way forever. That's not a sustainable, you cannot sustain 300+% growth forever. That's just, that's unrealistic to expect that. And I'll be perfectly okay if it slows down to only 10 or 20% growth. That would not be a bad thing. But it is really amazing, and I just want everybody just to realize that, because it's really easy when we're heads down, not realize the impact we're having out. And those numbers all came in with our board meeting and everything. As I was crunching them back in November, December, I was just like, holy crap, is this right? I had to keep going back through the spreadsheets and recap. Like, this can't be right. That's way too big a number. This cannot be. It didn't feel like that. It felt like crazy and busy and we're all really tired. But that many people, is that right? Go back through, look at the reports, put it together. Yeah, we had that much of an impact with so little resources. So, goals for this year. We're going to get a little bit more back to our roots on the research side. In 2020, because we did so much on the community side, our research side kind of choked out. We didn't move forward, except for this division. We didn't move forward with our research the way we should have. I was buried. You could argue that the whole TFN platform was a big part of our research. You really could. That's where all of our effort went. That was a huge project. But the research team fell by the wayside because I was so busy and overloaded, I wasn't able to keep that team active. Got to reinvigorate that group. So we're going to be getting back to those roots, because first and foremost, we are RPG research. Secondarily, we're community, but community is a key part of that whole feedback. So we're going to try to be careful about big time-consuming projects like TFN and Gen Con and all that. Not that we won't do it, but we're probably going to back off our scale a little bit so that we're involved, but that it isn't all hands on deck. It had to be all hands on deck to pull those off. And it really overwhelmed a lot of people. part of how this organization continues is we try not to burn out our volunteers by having too many hours per week. And we got too many hours per week during the summer. And we've had some trouble holding on to people because we got so overloaded. That is not our normal model, what happened this previous years have never been that intense. Again, the payoff was we helped a lot of people. Consequence was a lot of people got really burned out and overloaded. They love what we do, but they're like, oh, I need to recover from this. And that's hard to get people back into it after that. We're hoping, we check in every 6 months or so with everybody, go, hey, are you still interested? You still want to continue? What's your, how are you feeling about things? And 99% of people say, I still want to, I'm just, either A, I am active, B, my schedule's really busy, I'm going when I can, or C, I'm on hiatus right now, but I will be planning to come back, so please keep me in the system. Don't take me off the system. Don't take me. And then we get a small number, I think we've had maybe 6, maybe 9, somewhere around there over all those years that have said, yeah, I'm not going to continue. It's been a very small handful that have opted out that way. But we check in about once or twice a year to check on that, to see how many people on our rosters are still interested. Every nonprofit workshop I go to, the other nonprofits, many of them raising 10, 20, $30 million a year, have thousands of people around the world. They have a retention rate of a few weeks to a few months of their volunteers. Their volunteers churn constantly. They don't hold on to their volunteers. They're stunned by the fact that we have many volunteers that have been with us 2, 3+ years. We've only been incorporated since 2017. So, everything before that was project-based. It was just me gauging different organizations to do a project. We get a whole bunch of volunteers for that. And then when the project, and I train them and everything, and then when the project was over, everybody go their separate way, and I have to start the process all over again. But since we incorporated, we now try to hold on to that knowledge so that we can scale more, right? Otherwise, it's just starting over and over and over. So for 2021, back to our core research, we have $7,000 saved towards the $30,000 we need for rent to move into a warehouse. This downstairs basement's 1,750 square feet. It's packed to the gills. And then, of course, there's the bus and the trailers neighbors hate. We need somewhere to store them because every time I store them in RV storage, they get vandalized. We need a minimum 2,000 square foot warehouse with a 12-foot bay door, preferably upwards of 4,000 square feet so we have room for growth and all of that. So looking in the 2,000 to 4,000 square foot area, rent is $2,000 to $3,000 a month for anything like that. It's between, the lowest end is 20 cents per square foot, but that's usually only in the really big ones. Typically 40 to 90 cents per square foot. Do the math. It can be more than this, but basically we're budgeting, we need to raise $30,000 to pay for the first year's rent, move into a place and get this out of my house, get the bus and trailers in a protected place, open up the physical part of the museum, all of that. That's a big goal in 2021, is to get $30,000 saved in the savings account to put down on rent. And of course, we'll have to keep bringing money in for rent after that, but that at least gives us a year buffer in advance, right, to stay on top of that. So that's our big. What's that?
Good loss to get settled in.
Exactly. Yeah, and build it out. Like the museum will have a separated area, etc. So, yeah, exactly. So we prefer to get a place that's about $24,000 a month, and then that gives us about $6,000 to build out and utilities and things like that. So that's why we set $30,000 as our. When we get $30,000 in the savings account, we still have to raise money for our normal operating programs, web hosting, all of that. But when we get to that $30,000 mark in that savings account, then we'll pull the trigger on getting a warehouse and move. So that's a big goal for 2021. So get the research side, including this division, really growing and focused and really making results, delivering results, which you guys are doing a great job at. I just got to do it with the other departments. Stuff that is media worthy and gets attention, and which will hopefully then raise more funding, etc. Get the administrative staff built up so that we can continue this growth, because we cannot grow more if we don't get some administrative staff. So volunteer coordinator, administrative assistant, community outreach fundraiser, social media manager, those types of administrative roles, which we don't have filled. We really cannot grow more because John, Danielle, Kate, and I are maxed out on the administrative side. We have got to get that handed off to other people in order to continue. Odoo is doing great since we went down to Odoo 12 from Odoo 13. That is helping us scale as far as we have. But at this point, it just really is getting some administrative staff in. We get that administrative staff, there's every reason to expect by the end of 2021, we could once again double and be close to 300, between 200 and 300 volunteers each, once we have that administrative staff to handle that. The current projections are that will be, again, if we can get the administrative side and we get the warehouse and all that, by 2022, we will be around 500 volunteers worldwide. And by 2024, we'll be around 1,000 volunteers worldwide. It's kind of mind-boggling because when we were starting this in 2017, 2018, we didn't even expect to get to 50 volunteers, right? And then when we got to 50 volunteers last year, we're like, oh my goodness. And then now we're at over 130. And we're just like, okay, that wasn't expected. So if the trend continues, there's every reason to believe those numbers will be easy. And if certain key place that allow us to keep scaling. We've been doing the infrastructure for that. And this program, of course, has great scalability potential because it involves technology. Technology enables scalability much better than throwing bodies at it. So just kind of let you all know where that's going. The hope is, I'm in talks with a number of different people and organizations involved with BCI, VR, and that type of research, robotics, etc. PBS, you all know, of course, I'm doing the training for PBS coming up in February and March, doing live training webinars. At least I believe you all know this. Up to 100 of their network staff. Now, that's not one PBS station. We're talking the PBS network, the whole national network, of training their core staff on what we do. So recreation therapy, role-playing games, accessibility in gaming, BCI, the ERPG, all of that. We're giving them an introduction to all of that and then pointing into where they can go deeper. And they'll potentially, someone might do the workbook and the online training. That all starts in February. If PBS goes well, their plan is to incorporate our stuff into PBS's programming, into their community programs, their local communities, into their online programs like PBS Kids Online, their games, and into their television programming, right? Sesame Street and things like that. That's CBBS, but you know what I mean. The potential ripple effect from training PBS is also kind of like, trepidatious. I'm very trepidatious about doing that one right. It's going to be a challenge, but the biggest challenge is I only have an hour per webinar, up to 100 people, live, interactive, have to keep them interested with only an hour to work with, and yet I have to cover all that material. That's the hardest part. If you give me hours, great. We've done that many times, but trying to fit it in an hour and for them to track it and keep them interested and excited, that's the hardest part for me. So, but hopefully we'll pull that off, and who knows where PBS relations, the potential there. They're very excited about what we're doing here in the ERPG because it's something that they could adopt into like their online program, stuff like that. So just thought y'all might be interested to know all that. So that's 2021. So we're hoping by August-ish of this year that phase 2 will be getting near, just like phase 1 kind of completed in August of 2020 with Neverwhere Nights. We're still adding to it and enhancing it, but we reached our milestone in August of 2020. My hope is that by August of 2021, that we'll have our rough working basic prototype of this text-only part of the game working in a way that's able to be demonstrated at a very basic level, just like our Neverwhere Nights thing is able to be demonstrated at a basic level. Just to set that expectation and to make sure that it doesn't put too much weight on any one person. That's why we're going to try to grow the team and try to get a little bit larger numbers and then break people off into the different, QA and stuff like that, so that those of you in dev, yes, you need to test your code, but then hand it off, let somebody else dig in a little deeper on it, and that helps keep the momentum going.
That second opinion,
Yeah,
you can't give yourself as like a developer.
exactly. Yeah, you always need a fresh, separate set of eyes, and the XP approach doesn't solve that. It just means that your first iteration might be a little better, but it's still, you need a separate pair of eyes separate from that development team to go to the next level. So that's that whole dev, test, stage, production process. So I think that's the key things I wanted to hit on there. So thank you for your time on that. I'm sorry it took quite a while, but it was kind of the year in review for everybody, and a lot happened. I'm going to try to slow the pace down a little bit in 2021. I don't know if I can. It's kind of like runaway horses once they get going. I don't know if I can, but I feel like we need to backfill a few things here first to kind of just stabilize things a little bit in 2021 to allow for it to go to the next big jump. Whether or not I can do that, I don't know. But we're having a meeting in a week or two, planning for the future. Watch for the invite. We would love all of your input to help us decide what the priorities are in 2020. So watch for an announcement for that in the next few days as we schedule that, and everybody's input is welcome. We were normally do our board meeting, but we were there was just too much on our plate, so we just did the year in review, and we're making a separate meeting for the planning of 2020. So that's it on my end. Valerie, why don't you go ahead and take it away with what you have? Roll call, all that.
Just kind of a late reminder of everyone, make sure you're logging hours. And then we'll just here make sure you're running. So Doug, Luke,
Here, I'm alive.
okay.
Thank goodness.
Dario.
Here.
Okay. So we have a couple really quick kind of check-in things, and then we were going back to Warlock of Firetop Mountain, wireframing and all that. So first, Doug, I know you're finished, but Luke and Dario, are you guys, where are you populating the Neverwinter Nights modules?
I think I sent a newest one I had on my computer. I'm waiting to hear back. I know Trevor, once he gets back, he was working with a lot of that audio stuff. Even if I can't get actual voice acting, just getting like some interactive audio of some kind, I think will help, since it is kind of a barren castle by design, that part.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, after that, I should be good.
Yeah, and I'll finish mine this week for the next.
Okay. The next thing we had to check in about was revisiting the Minecraft clone. We had discussed gathering more data on classic parasology and seeing if there were any other contenders, which kind of last meeting said there wasn't really.
Like one, I thought there was like that mind test they brought up.
Right.
That one, like, you can customize. Looks really.
Okay, do tell.
Yeah, I'm looking on their website. It's basically like
What's the website?
mindtest.net. But when I looked at it, it kind of looks like it's its own API. You can kind of change it to fit your needs. But I don't know if it has Linux support, but it is open source.
Are you sure about the URL? Because I'm getting weirdness.
That's okay. Maybe I'll try sending. Well, I just went here and I got it. Maybe it might redirect. On your end.
Mind. I was doing Mind. MIND. Sorry, my bad. Thinking BCI.
Like okay.
My bad. Okay, there we go.
Domain names are great.
Yeah. I have 260 of them. All right. Okay, so there's the download. It does not have a web version.
No.
Okay, it's not a showstopper. It's a nice to have. But, okay, so go ahead. You were saying.
When I looked into it, it looks like if you want to add a feature or like you want to mod it slightly to your needs, you just use this Lua. So like, I don't have experience with Lua, but assuming like kind of know your way around it when it fits.
Okay. Do they offer the ability to host our own server, or do we have to use their server?
Just play it on a multi.
I see that, but they still
looking,
might.
looking. Or let's just say on tell me more. That just brings us down.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, here you go. Play by yourself, locally with friends, or online with doesn't. That doesn't really answer the question.
No.
There is a section for setting up a server on Scientist Wiki. I'll post the link.
Oh, so then yes.
I do see under servers, announcing servers, set this in your server configuration, server announce equals true, server name, etc. So maybe that's just included with the core download. Have you tried it? Have you played it?
Not yet. I haven't had time.
Okay.
I just remember that one was the people in the classic queue.
Yeah, I remember that.
Or
Yeah.
were recommending that.
All right. Shall we just make that a to-do for this week then? Everybody download and try that one out and see how we like it compared to Classic Cube and Solid.
Can't do that.
I personally didn't like it. I felt like
Oh, you did
wasn't-
try it.
I tried it a while ago. I felt like it wasn't realistic compared to the other compared to Minecraft itself and the other Minecraft versions.
Hmm.
Does it have crafting or anything?
No, it didn't have crafting, and I think none of them had crafting. But the map was it. It felt like they had an algorithm to make the map, but the algorithm was so predictable that it didn't feel like a real environment.
Was it like the
definitely
Harry
felt like
Potter
we were
houses
playing a
kind of?
computer game. I wasn't immersed in the Minecraft experience.
All right. So before we jump then, let's go ahead and go through what everybody else had time to look into as far as going deeper. Why don't you go ahead, Dario? What did you work on?
Well, I did try the other two, and I think I mentioned last time that teratology was more visually appeasing. I think it was only because it was different, but I feel like in the long term, it might be too overwhelming because the colors were more vibrant, which was nice. It was a nice change. But I feel like if I would play Minecraft the long term, I would probably go with Classic Cube. More basic, more standard, but more
Closer match.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't as overwhelming. Because I felt like terasology, you know how some people they'll add a bunch of filters to a picture?
Yeah.
And the picture looks awesome, but I feel like you can only use so many pictures like that until even that gets old.
Okay.
So I would say Classic Cube would probably be, at least for me, would be the safest pick.
That'd be your vote. Okay, great. Doug.
Yeah, I looked at Classic Cube and Terasology like a feature stuff, I think we talked last time about Terasology, some remade scenarios you could get crafting and some of the things it's hard to find your way around. That's a lot heavier. I mean, Classic Cube's appealing because it's so light and easy. So I mean, that's the trade-off, in my opinion.
Is it something that's going to keep 9 to 14 years old players interested for, let's say, a few weeks of meeting once a week for 2 to 4 hours? 2 hours, let's say.
That might put you in Terasology
Okay.
if you can get it to run.
Or
Okay.
Minecraft, one of the two, depending on what you do.
If you're going to say 2 hours, I'd say Classic Cube hands down. But if
Okay.
you're going to
No, 2 hours is the limit because
out,
remember. So I don't know if any of you attend any of our training, but one of the things that neuroscience has shown regarding screen time for games is that between 45 to 90 minutes is beneficial for your brain to play video games. Whether it's Tetris, whether it's a role-playing game, whether it's a shooter, whether it's Mario Karts, whatever, you get lots of benefits from 45 to 90. There's half a dozen different studies that all have separately over the years come to the same conclusion in that range. Maximum 2 hours. What's that?
Per day?
Per day.
Okay.
So we basically, the shorthand version is 1 to 2 hours per day is a healthy limit. When you start to cross that 2 hour threshold, the deficits start to more consistently outweigh the benefits. The deficits are higher cortisol and stress hormone levels that don't subside, higher aggression, higher over responsiveness, obesity rates, lack of social engagement. A lot of things happen. Now, role-playing games stand out a little bit differently because they add other stuff. So up to the 2 hours, it doesn't matter what the video game is. They all benefit you in a lot of ways. Role-playing games are a little different depending upon the role-playing game. World of Warcraft doesn't stand out as much as some other role-playing games like Dragon Age and such that have a little bit different. But there hasn't been, outside of our organization, enough research done on the neuroscience side of that to give definitive numbers. But it appears to us from our side that those types of role-playing games that are more social and less combat-driven, the benefits might go a little longer in duration. But we don't know yet. We haven't been able to do a controlled large-scale study. It's one of our many research questions that we have that I want to get the research team doing, that we do that. We get people and we test them and find this out. And compare and contrast that to the other video game.
Hawk,
Yes.
I wanted to add to that whole like video game timing, like how much is too much. I can tell you from like my personal experience. At the end of the year, last year when Cyberpunk came out, I will admit I kind of have a problem. Like oh, I could do laundry or this or like go to the store or whatever, or I could play Cyberpunk.
That's a whole other thing.
I-
But those
I
do
beat it
become
now,
factors. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a brain conditioning thing, and a brain and body conditioning thing, and it does. It becomes reinforcing the dopamine, the adrenaline, all of that. So the rule of thumb that we teach in all of our training is 1 to 2 hours is the safe range per day for video game. Just across the board. After that, the deficits start to take over. And so we try to orient our programs with that in mind, that if we're doing a video game, we try to limit the sessions to 2 hours. You'll notice our Neverwinter Night sessions, instead of being 3 or 4 hours, like our meetings and our most of our role-playing game sessions are typically around 3 to 4 hours. Our video game sessions are typically 90 minutes to 2 hours. And most people report needing a break after about 2 hours. They're like, they kind of need to take a break. And now people on the spectrum and others with OCD and those with addictive personalities, which is a really bad use of terms, but laypersons get that, lay people. That's a different story. And certainly, I did, whether it was role-playing gaming or video games, because I wrote my own video games back in the 70s and 80s, I was totally capable of doing 16 to 24 hours straight in a day. Not a problem, but it definitely wasn't good for me. I wouldn't have argued that then. I'm like, oh yeah, I know I'm doing this too much, but I got all these numbers in my head. I got to get this down. I don't want to forget, because it takes getting the flow, and I'm in the flow. And anybody who codes in any depth understands that flow state. And you get similar experiences with some of these video games, etc. You don't want to break away. That still doesn't mean it's healthy balance, right? It's not a healthy life balance. We always want to find out where those safety levers are. So anyway, when we're looking at, let's look at these Minecraft clones again, adding mind tests to the mix, and think about, because that's the main reason we're looking at the clones rather than the original, is the community programs were running into a problem where a lot of the community members can't afford the $30 to buy Minecraft. And because they can no longer go to the community center to play them, right? So up till COVID, they would go to like Spark Central or their school or their library, and if they were lucky, they installed on the computer and they were allowed to play. And they usually had a 1 to 2 hour limit, or even less sometimes, that they were allowed to play, right? Then they had to leave the computer, free it up for somebody else. But they would go to these places to play Minecraft, which was great for them. It's creative. Sometimes they work together collaboratively. There's a lot of great things about Minecraft. But once everything went in lockdown, schools, libraries, community centers, they have no access to it because they can't afford the $30, because it's the difference between eating that week or having Minecraft. Now, if it was up to the kids, they'd get Minecraft on their phones or whatever. But it's up to the parents, and the parents are deciding they need to feed their kids, right? It really makes that much of a difference. So that's why we've been trying to find a clone. So with that in mind, now we've narrowed the scope down to Class Cube, Terasology, and Mind Test. We've got now they're closer and matched to all the others that were not close. Only Class Cube has the web-based version. It appears to be the easiest. Now let's evaluate all three of them. We want all of them to be easy to download, install, and run. If they're too difficult to download, install, and run for an average user, they're not going to be able to use it, right? Because we're dealing with 9 to whatever year olds, all the way up. And often, you know, they may be more technically savvy than their parents, but they're not really techie people like those techie. So you got to think average kid to young adult, who's not a super techie savvy, needs to be able to download, run, and play very easily without beefy hardware, right? Most of them are running very old systems or they're mobile or whatever. And that if they were to do it for 2 hours once a week, would that keep them engaged? Doesn't mean they won't play 2 hours every day. That could totally be 2 hours every day. That's another thing you could look at. 2 hours versus 2 hours once a week for 8 weeks, or 2 hours per day or every other day for a few weeks. So for example, like in an inpatient facility, they might have 2 hours set aside or 1 hour set aside to play Minecraft in the facility that's allocated time. Do these hold up within that limited scope? So if they're weekly, let's say for 4 weeks, let's just say for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, played every day for 1 hour, is it going to hold their interest for 1 hour a day for 2 weeks enough that they're going to enjoy it? Or if it's weekly, then it's going to be a 2 to 3 month period. That's you know, it's going to be 8 to 12 sessions, give or take. Is that going to hold their interest? Right now, the once per week is more likely to be a lower demand, right? It's going to be easier to meet their interest only once per week versus every week. So as you're trying them out, kind of think in those terms between these 3 games, because that's ultimately the ideal. That's the most common 2 use cases we will have is 1 hour per day, a few times a week, or 2 hours once per week. And if it engages them for 2 to 3 months, or if it engages them for a few weeks of daily or every other day use, that's good enough to be a Minecraft clone. They might then want to save up and get Minecraft or whatever, but we want that. And of course we need that we can host it as a server and that we can create custom settings and all of that so that we can control the environment that's appropriate, control griefing, whatever. Now, none of them have survival mode, is that correct? All of these have turned out not to have survival mode. That's why there's no crafting except for Terrasology hacks. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
So if you can find a way to get survival mode working in any of them, even if it's difficult, especially if the survival mode means we have to set up on the server and then they just join and play, that's okay if the burden is on us. But if the burden is on them, that they have to compile code to get a plugin to work to do survival mode on the client side, that's not going to work. That is not going to work. But if we have to compile code to get a plugin to work on the server side, that's okay. We are more than happy to take on that burden as long as it's doable on the server side, as long as they can just connect with a client easily. Even if it means they like connect the server and there's a side load of the module, whatever it is, as long as it's not difficult for them, that's okay. So I would love for us to have that survival mode option. Not required, but it would be great to have that. So those are the variables we want to look at now with these 3. So let's all of us take time between this week and next week to get in a little time, get an opinion on that. We haven't heard from anybody else so far on the other 2. Doug, did you have anything else you wanted to say? Okay, Luke?
I think either Terrasology or needed. I know I thought the knowledge was no it would be to modify that.
Don't let that be a variable at this stage of evaluation.
Yeah.
So right now we're worried about the end user thing. If it's a pain on our side, but it's doable,
Yeah.
we can live with that.
No problem.
That's not a showstopper. The showstopper is if it's
theory,
difficult. Yeah, go ahead.
That sounds like the best option.
Okay.
Oh, we can just customize.
Yeah, we're not worried about that right now. What we care about is the end user experience.
And personally, from like playing them, I
Mhm.
preferred Terrasology.
Okay.
Like it looked better. I thought the controls felt more. It wasn't like the bugs were like they're using that you which could like like mine a tree from a mile away. So stuff like that. Like I preferred it. Now is not worth like burden of.
So when you're playing, write all these thoughts down because they'll fall out of your head when we come around next week. That's a key thing to doing research and evaluation is taking notes. So while each of us is doing this, and Valerie, if you can do it as well, so you get your notes as well. Each of us, and feel free to put it on the computer that you have because that's totally appropriate for it.
Mm-hmm.
Write down the notes of as it pops into your head as you try that. You go, oh, this is kind of weird, or oh, I really like this, or oh, this is quite different. Write those thoughts down so that you have them handy when we have the meeting, and hopefully next week we can finally pull the trigger on this. We don't have a set timeline, so I'd much rather we do as many iterations as we need to do to feel comfortable about our decision. That's the beauty of this organization is we are results oriented rather than timeline oriented, right? We set a goal, and what matters is reaching the specifics of that goal. We would like it to be in a certain amount of time, but time is on that triangle of resources and everything else. Time is the lowest priority. What matters is doing it right and getting the right information and making the right choice. It's like we've been doing with the other stuff, trying to evaluate the right tools. It's not about getting it out the door as quickly as possible, like most organizations. We have the luxury of doing this as many times as we need to until we've got good data. So definitely, if we have to do this another week, we will. But let's see if we can come to something that we all feel comfortable with. We go, you know what, this is what really stood out for me, and we're all kind of like nodding our heads, like, yeah, we want a good pros and cons list where we're all pretty much can agree. It doesn't have to be unanimous, but we're in general agreement that yeah, here's the pros, here's the cons of each. That makes it a lot easier to make an informed decision, and I think we're getting really close to that. So let's see if we can pull that off for next week. Good. Okay. Any other questions about that, about additional use case or requirements that you could be looking for, or was I pretty clear about what you need?
Good. I did find things during the that apparently Mind Test does have craft. Apparently,
Ooh.
it looks like, but I don't know if that's with.
Right. Well, that's what we have to determine.
It is documented.
Okay.
It does say here that additional player-created recipes would suggest that this everything did in the original download.
Everything else is DLC.
All right.
Right.
Well, that's a big deal. If there's a way, so when you're looking at that as far as ease of experience, keep in mind we might be able to make the user experience simpler. If you see a way that's to make it easier for them that we can solve, great. So for example, yes, it might be that you have to go to 6 different places to download these mods, which is too burdensome for our average users. However, if we can say, if we can give the players a single, because when we do events, so if you guys look at our events page, let me see how it's looking, because we've got events. Everybody go to rpgresearch.com. And then and then after you go there, go to /events. And then when you get there, for example, click on drop in an RPG Adventures in Middle Earth. And you'll see we have a step-by-step of, okay, sign up here, right? Do your register now thing. Here's the overview of the adventure. You scroll down, and then we have the steps that say, number 1, register for the event. Number 2, download and print character sheet. So there's a link to download either a blank or pre-generated character sheet. Download. Then there's number 3, obtain rule book. Number 4, read terms, read and agree to the gamer code of conduct. And then the last one is join the game. If it is possible to have these links to say, now download this mod, and it's not too difficult to run the install of the mod, like we make it, as long as there's a recipe that we set that they can just go through, easily step by step, that isn't going to create a lot of technical support issues, that we can put all on one page, we can live with that.
Like, we give them lots.
Exactly. As long as there's some way to make that easy for them, as long as they don't have to compile it, right? Obviously, not going to work if they have to compile. But if we can pre-compile Windows version and Linux version and Mac versions and mobile or whatever, we can, as long as there's a way for us to save them the work so it's easy for them, then it's not a showstopper. If it has to be compiled on the end user's machine themselves, then it is a showstopper. That's just too much to ask any of our participants to go through that. So that's promising. If there is a crafting option, even if it's not fully blown, that's a big advantage over the other two. Parasology, we still don't know how well that works. So those are all things to look at, because that is a big one. I think that crafting is a wonderful feature of Minecraft, and we want to understand that. So definitely try that out, everybody, and then see if you can think of a way to make it easy for the end user. Does that make sense? Anything else? Okay, Valerie.
Well, it's break time.
Yep.
Great time.
Woohoo! All right. So everybody get up, physically move around. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.
quite a while. No problem.
Okay, so we're talking about now. Who was it who's asking this?
Luke.
Okay, Luke is asking about how do you create a game internally, not publicly, to play with your friends based on existing IP. In this case, King of the Hill. That's the big question here. And I've been talking about you can use the Lord of the Rings Tolkien model with MERP and Tor and all of that as examples. And one of the options is that you set it up in a fictional town elsewhere that's in the style of King of the Hill, but does not have the actual characters. They would be out of town visits or something like that. The other is you actually want to play the actual characters, as you said, that are in the series. But unless you want to just be reenacting the series, and that's just more acting improv rather than role-playing gaming, you have to decide where in the canon of the series that it ran you're going to start. Where does your group start? Do they start before the show series events? Do they start after the show ends? Do they start somewhere in between? If you do it after the show ends, that's easy, because now you can make up all you want. You've got all this background history to draw from. And so in Lord of the Rings, for example, there's a fourth age setting, right? Because the end of the Lord of the Rings is the end of the third age and the beginning of the fourth age. And everything in the fourth age, Tolkien only wrote about abstractly. He never finished any works. So the fourth age was wide open. You had all the canon before, which they couldn't change. And now you can go forward from there and create Middle Earth in any way you want. So that's one option, is if everybody agrees, let's do it at the end of the series and play forward from there. Then you don't have any canon problems, right? You just base it on what happened before you create the forward history. That's the easiest option. If you want, you guys have a favorite season or time when there were certain characters that weren't there later, like let's say they're dead or whatever, then you pick that particular season as your starting point. But then you pretty much all have to agree that everything after that, there'll be key events that they don't have control over. So let's say in the storyline a hurricane hits or something like that. Those key events will still all happen, right? They're not things they can influence. So whoever the GM is needs to figure out what those key events are that will still happen. But
if you start the game in season 1, all the events in season 2 and onward still happen despite the events of your campaign.
Yeah, the events that are beyond their control, the events that are nature and government and whatever that they don't have any control over. But the rest of the story, they're going to control what happens, and the GM will lay these out. So here's another way to do this. I think I mentioned before the Thieves World book series. Okay, they started like 1978, 79. There were 13 books in the first series and then 3 or 4 books in the second series when it was half a dozen different top popular fantasy writers all writing in the same setting. And their characters...
I found it.
Okay, the characters run into each other and could bump each other off. The books are out of print, but you can track them down. They're not too expensive. And the characters could literally interact with each other's characters. These were all short stories, each with different authors. But they're all in the same setting together. It was Sanctuary, was the name. And they'd have their own separate adventures, but over time, they would hear of the other characters, etc., and they could interact with each other. And sometimes they helped each other's characters out. Sometimes they bumped each other off. And there was an overarching editor, Robert Lynn Aspirin, who put all this together. And back then, they did it through mostly postal mail and occasional in-person meeting. But he controlled the world setting, and he would lay out, he'd mail everybody, here's the key events that happened this year. Now go ahead and write. And then they'd coordinate with him, and he'd he'd be their referee, make it all work. Very, very challenging. It's a rather distinctive setting. That's what's beautiful about it. You have all these different writing styles and everything else going on. It's very interesting. But they're all in a core setting. And they're agreeing to, here's the core of what you cannot change. This is going to happen. Now go ahead and unfold it within that. So if you're doing it in the middle of the series rather than after the series is over, then that's what the GM is going to have to do, is have certain things that everybody will recognize from the episodes as oh yeah, that happened. But you're going to have to let go of the rest of the story progression, because players are not going to do the same things that happen in the series.
Then that just turns into like a readout of the script.
Otherwise, that's exactly it. And that gets boring after a while. It's fun at first, but it gets boring after a while. So that's the key thing. So the easiest one, as I said, is do it at the end of the series. But if you want to do it mid-series, then that's how you got to do it, is have that structure to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that helps a lot. I can talk to my GM about that.
Great. If you need any more pointers, let me know. I've done this many
No
times.
problem.
I've done it with Dune. I've done it with ET. I've done it with I don't know, just so many different IPs. Now, this is all stuff you can't do publicly
For
Right.
copyright and all that.
because of copyright. You can do it
Legalities,
internally,
stuff.
but you can't do it publicly, and you can't do it for money. So, because we train professional game masters, we go, yeah, you can't make money off of that. You'll get in big trouble. You might get away with it for a while, but sooner or later somebody will suit into oblivion. But with your own group for your own fun, and it's not doing it in a public area, entertainment, and make sure you don't stream it either. Any of those could be a violation. But in your own group, no big deal. I have a multiverse campaign called Worlds of Beirut. Got a couple of seasons of it on our stream, and then also I did it on the Spartan Show. And what I do with that is, because later in the series, as you travel through the mists, which are multidimensional, basically, if it was ever possible or written about, it exists somewhere in the multiverse. And your characters go through the mists, and I've got 1,000 different results that can happen. I haven't quite filled the list, but it's getting there. And they include fanciful things that were only written about. So, for example, one PC got kicked out by Baba Yaga into the mists because he wasn't respectful enough to her. And he ended up in the middle of the 1917 St. Petersburg Revolution and trying to survive that. And then he ran away, and then he escaped, but of course, there's always a little tweak because it's the mists. There's infinite variations in the multiverse. Eventually, he ran into, as he's stumbling along in the swamps and such, near the one of the deep lakes in Siberia, with the Rift Lake there, the lake I think in the world. He came across Mr. and Mrs. Mudge, the otters from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, okay. My brain was trying to put two together. I'm like, wait,
I'm
what?
assuming I got the names right. And from there, he got information on where he could, because he was trying to get back through the mist back to his world, and they gave him pointers, and so he had to go to a port and be taken out on a ship and go get swallowed by a giant whale, a big great white whale, get swallowed by that whale and taken through the mists and then spit out on the beach later. So I mixed in C.S. Lewis, Moby Dick,
I was just about to say that.
and Jonah, with history of, say, because I know a lot of Russian history and stuff. Mixed all of that into the setting. Now, all of that is not a problem because a lot of it's public domain, but the C.S. Lewis part, I would probably, if I was broadcasting it or doing it as a paid gig, I probably couldn't use the same name. I would have to just call it, Mr. and Mrs. Fudge or something. I'd have to fudge the names just a little bit, just to avoid that if it was in a paid or public setting. But internally, I've run that campaign, many groups over the decades, and it doesn't matter internally. Use anything I want. And so I like one of the other myths that is part of the arc. It's part of the core story arc. They end up on Arrakis in the early stages, right after the Count and such has landed and has taken over running things there, and right as the Harkonnens are about to drive them out, the group ends up on Arrakis and role plays through that. Again, for the broadcast, I can't use Arrakis and Harkonnen and these things. I have to tweak all the names and such for public use. I have to shave off the serial numbers. But for internal use, it's no big deal. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So tangent there. Sorry, took up more time I meant to, but I hope that was helpful. All right, Valerie.
Okay, so the next we had to do was continue Warlock of Firetop Mountain with the wireframing.
What option did we stop at?
The last thing you gave me was page 147.
Page or option?
Page is what I have written.
It's probably option, probably not. Because it was you leave. So 147 was you leave the room and open the box in the passage. Inside you find a single piece of gold and a small mouse. That sound right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's option 147. There aren't actually page numbers on. They're all choices. A whole bunch of choices per page.
Okay.
Okay, good. So 147 was the last one. So you leave the room and open the box in the passage. Inside, you find a single piece of gold and a small mouse, which must have been the creature's pet. You keep the coin and release the mouse, which scurries off down the passageway. Gain 2 luck points and then turn to 208. Further up the passage, along the west wall, you see another door. Okay, who's mapping today? I guess all of you are mapping, right? You're all
I think
mapping.
the draw.io thing.
Yeah, who's on?
Yeah.
Who's gone dry.io
I think
today?
it said Odoo. Last time I checked it, it's my turn.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then everybody should be mapping themselves. Actual, but for diagramming, who said that? Did you?
Luke.
Luke. Okay, great. Alrighty then. So further up the passage along the west wall, you see another door. You listen at it, but hear nothing. So let's see, whose turn was it? Did we decide that, or I need to roll?
We need to roll for it.
Okay.
I think.
You want to go ahead and? Hey, Luke, you want to share your screen with and pull up that particular option in the diagramming?
With the
This is the
non-combat.
Non-combat turn choice.
Okay,
Exactly.
just making sure I had the right chart pulled up.
You got
I
it.
know, so I gotta get that. My draw.io just broke this morning, and I fixed it.
Oh,
It wouldn't open at all. Now
Oh.
it works.
okay.
So that's good. Now I'm gonna open the file. What? I think now it got it.
Okay.
I think. No, it keeps overwriting it. What? I literally opened it 5 minutes ago, and now it's like, hey, you know that file you want? You can't open that now.
Ah,
Like, I can literally see it. Hang on. Why? Yeah, it says it's not available. Like, even though the files are there, like I go into Windows, it's like this item isn't available. It might have been renamed, removed, but I didn't do anything to it.
anybody else run into this problem before?
Nope.
I can screen share and show you what it looks like. It's
Yeah, please
weird.
do.
Cause it's like I literally see the files on my computer, and it's just like, nope, you can't use those, buddy.
Look.
Yeah, here we go. It's like
I don't see
So if
anything.
I go,
They're
like,
not here. Okay, there we go. I see it now.
IO. And this is the file I'm trying to open. It does this. And I made sure the drive was plugged in. It's on the F drive. I made sure I have it.
Okay, well, instead of using the shortcut, go to your file manager
Yeah.
and go to the file directly.
Let's see if you can get to the file manager for what I'm looking for directly in here. I don't want no update. If I open existing diagram, I'll have to find it. One sec. Let me turn off while I find it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out where all this, because the one file's on the C drive and it wasn't even open. And the C drive is my boot drive, so that has to be connected.
Yeah. Sometimes the file association or other things.
Yeah. If someone else wants to screen share in the meantime for this part, they can do that, and I can figure this out while I'm trying to we can continue the meeting.
All right. Who wants to take over? Valerie, how would you like to take over?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Which document is it?
This will be the non-combat turn selection.
Should be the more
I got
updated
it.
of the two.
Okay, got it, Luke?
Yeah, I think I found what the issue was. So
Okay.
I run an external drive through a dongle, but I guess the USB port in the dongle's busted.
Okay.
And I put into an internal one and fixed it.
Okay. Go ahead and
Sorry
pull
about
up your
that.
screen
Hold
then.
on.
Go ahead and pull it up and share it.
It's right here. You see it?
There we go. Yep. All right. So, number of users. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Pull it. Okay. So it's going to be U count equals 4. Store user count 4. User output process. We've got 4 users. And user count opt out. Does anybody want to opt out for making this decision?
No.
No.
I'm including Valerie in this. Okay.
No.
No opting out. So now I'll go ahead and I'll be the random die generator, D4. Gotta allocate. That was one of the things, was assigning who is what number. Okay, so 1 gonna be Valerie, 2 Luke, and again it'll be determined by who joins when, etc. In the actual software, but for this I'm just looking at my list and going from top to bottom. 3 is Doug, 4 is Dario. All right, I rolled a 4, so Dario, you get to make the choice. So the choice you have to make is, do you want to try opening the door, which you did not hear anything when you listened, or do you want to continue northward?
Let's continue.
Okay, continue northwards, 363. And so at this point, Dario, I've now crossed out your name because we want to make sure you don't end up getting a turn twice in a row before others get a turn. Remember, we do the cancellation process in the method. Make sure that user doesn't get twice and everybody else gets a turn.
Okay.
Remember, we were trying to make sure that didn't happen where somebody got to make the choice too many times.
Yep.
So next time it will be rolling against 3 people, and they can opt out and then finals.
Where's the cancellation in the non-combat turns?
I'm
trying to find out what it is.
That is the temporary exclusion sub-process.
Okay.
That's what that blank box is. Temporary exclusion sub-process. We have
problem.
not detailed that. That's going to be more of a pseudocode thing than a flowchart, because it's all one task. But basically, we store this user in an array or buffer or whatever, and then we compare that when we go back to the number of user count. We exclude that user from it, and then we go back through the whole, give the option to opt out, then random user count from that remaining list. So I guess for that temporary exclusion sub process, the arrow should come back up and around and go into store user count.
This arrow, make a new arrow.
The arrow, you should make a new arrow on the right-hand side of the big box that loops up and around and connects to the input of store user. The side of store. Might fight you a little.
Yeah, it's being pretty stuck. That's close.
We want it coming out of the side of that box too, of the big.
Yeah. I'm trying to see. I don't think this one has it.
Well, you can force it by doing it a step at a time instead of all in one step. So first start from the right-hand side of the box rather than the top. Beat that. Come out from the right-hand side. Okay. Yeah, but don't try to connect it yet. Don't try to connect it yet. Okay, now you can shape it where you want it. Control Z can also undo.
I'm trying to see if there's a way you can align the arrows in here.
You get the general idea, though, and we can probably
Yeah.
make that big empty box a little smaller at this point. It's placeholder.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're going to 363. So everybody, of course, update your diagrams accordingly.
There
Sorry.
I got it.
Okay, good. Well, you got to fix the left arrow now because it fixed where the box is. But you got the general idea.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to everybody?
I thought we added some more to this diagram on the bottom.
I don't know. Did anybody have a newer? Anybody else's diagram have more stuff?
Yeah, this is the 1031. There was an additional
Okay.
11.
Okay. So we need. You're out of sync there.
Oops.
Is
Is it on GitHub?
Why don't you go ahead and grab that?
Yeah, I'll stop and we'll
Yep.
get the...
Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
All right. That's why we're doing this, so we stay in sync and keep moving forward. Good catch there. All right. 363. Further up the passage on the west wall, you see another similar door. You listen at the door and grimace to hear the worst singing you have ever heard in your life. All right, so decision making between Val, Luke, and Doug. So we only have 3 people this time. Anybody want to opt out of decision making between Val, Luke, and Doug?
Nope.
I'd like to opt out. I don't
Opt
want to
out?
hear the singing.
Okay, so Doug opts out.
No, Luke opted
Or
out.
sorry,
Yeah,
Luke.
Luke.
Sorry.
And is this door on the west wall? That's what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's between Val and Doug. All right, Valerie. Sorry, I just wrote it down quickly. All right, it is going to be Doug. So, Doug, would you like to go into the room to investigate this hideous din, or walk on up the passageway?
I can't contribute to the singing on myself, I guess.
We don't know yet. Maybe after you go in there, who knows?
I'll go in the door, sure.
All right. Sorry, Luke. All right, so that's going to be option 370. The door opened, reveal a small room. Room is dirty and unkempt. Raw mattress lies in one corner. In the center of the room is a wooden table upon which a candle burns, lighting the room with its flame. A small box rests under the table. Seated around the table are 2 small creatures with warty skin, dressed in leather armor. They are drinking some sort of grog, and by the way they stagger to their feet on your arrival, you assume they are very drunk. You may either... Well, we'll wait to the... Okay, so now we're down to Luke or Valerie. Because, Doug, you've been added to the automatic exclusion. Valerie or Luke, do you want to opt out, or are you both okay with being considered for making a choice?
I'm okay with being considered. I'm just cloning the repo.
Valerie? You okay?
I'm staying in.
Okay, good. So it's between the 2 of you. Looks like it's going to be Luke.
Okay.
So Luke, do you want to draw your sword and leap forward at them, or slam the door quickly and run up the passage?
I want to run away.
All right, so we'll jump to 42. Life the universe.
Yay. I like that number.
42. You eventually arrive at the end of the passage at a 3-way junction. You may turn either to the west or the east, or go back south the way you came. So, Valerie, do you want to make a choice?
Yeah.
Or opt out? Okay, so that now resets the buffer of the opt-out, not the opt-out, the automatic exclusion list after she makes her decision gets emptied, and we start over again. That makes sense? Okay, so Valerie, you can either turn west, east, or go back the way you came.
Go east.
All right, so east, we're going to go to 113. You arrive at another junction in the passage. You may go either, well, okay, so we're at a junction. Now, once again, you guys get to make a choice. Anybody want to opt out? Okay. Rolling. Doug, you get to make a choice between north or eastward.
I'll go north.
All right, north it is. And you are now put in the exclusion buffer. And so, said north, 285. You see a well-used door on the right-hand east side of the passage. With your ear to the keyhole, you listen and hear a man screaming for help from inside. All right, we now have Valerie, Luke, and Dario as potentials. Anybody want to opt out?
Nope.
I would like to opt out.
Who's that? Luke?
Luke.
All right, you want to opt out. So it's going to be Valerie and Dario. Okay. Go ahead and roll. All right. Valerie, it's your choice.
Okay, let's go in.
You want to, okay, well, so the choices are, will you open the door or walk on? You want to open the door.
Yep.
So 213. The door is locked. You may try to charge it down by rolling 2 dice, if you wish. Actually, it doesn't really give you a choice. You get to try to charge it down and make a skill check. So since you made that choice, Valerie, you're the one making the check on this, I guess.
Okay.
So you got to roll 2d6.
Okay.
Add the 2 numbers together and tell me the total.
9.
9. And what is your current skill score?
11.
11. So it was equal to or less. So you succeed. Let's see. So the door bursts open and we turn to 36. And then you're now in the exclusion buffer.
I got the repo cloned.
Oh, good.
It wouldn't let me just like fetch the origin and get the file for some reason. I don't know why, but I cloned it again and I was able to get it.
Okay. User makes game decision. Okay. For exclusion of process. Right, because that's okay. So that's where so it actually looks like that number 13. We should actually make that go up and over to the store user count. I think we put it in too far down the chain. What do you get? So that should go from the top of the temporary exclusion subprocess into number 4 store user. Does that make more sense?
Mm-hmm.
So to make it cleaner, let's do this. Let's have number 11 come out the bottom.
I see.
And number 13 come out the side.
Like something like this. Hang on.
Yeah, 11
Right.
and 12. Yeah, it goes out and then in. Got it. And
I'll tweak these lines once.
you got it. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. I lost track of my. Okay, it was 36, correct? The locked door bursts open. A nauseating stench hits your nostrils. Inside the room, the floor is covered with bones, rotting vegetation, and slime. A wild-haired old man, clothed in rags, rushes at you screaming. His beard is long and gray, and he's waving an old wooden chair leg. Is he simply insane as he appears, or has this been some kind of trap? So okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's charging at you. So we're down to Dario and Luke are not in the exclusion buffer yet. Either of you want to opt out?
Nope.
No.
Okay. So between the two of you, it's a roll. And that's going to be Luke. Now you're in the exclusion. Okay, so Luke, do you want to shout at him to try to calm him down, or draw your sword and attack him?
I'd like to shout. I don't want to stab him.
Okay,
Stab him
I
bad.
just find it really funny to say shout at him to try to calm him down. That is
The
not
most effective way.
yeah, that's not considered an appropriate de-escalation technique.
That's like one of those bad parenting examples. Like,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I find it interesting that the rotor wrote that. Could have said, you try to talk to him, to calm him down, but no, shout at him. Reminds me of the original Airplane where everybody takes turns slapping the hysterical woman and it escalates and escalates.
That's hilarious.
Because it's baseball bat and
couldn't write a scene like that nowadays.
what's that?
I said you couldn't write a scene like that nowadays.
Yeah, somebody would be professionally offended. All right. So 263. You shout, "You're freed, old man!" at the top of your voice. Instantly, panting cease. He stops dead in his tracks, sinks to the floor, weeping loudly. As he gradually composes himself, thanks you many times. You talk with him in the hope of discovering some of the secrets of the mountain. He begins to. Many years ago, he was an adventurer like you in search of the warlock's treasure. He was captured by the orcs and thrown into a solitary cell as a sort of pet for the creature. You ask whether he would like to accompany you into the mountain, but he simply wants to leave and see the world again. Hello. Welcome, welcome. You ask him for advice, but he says he knows little. He advises you to pay your respects to the boatman. That's an important tidbit there. Advises you to pay your respects to the boatman. He tells you that you must pull the right-hand lever on the wall ahead, open the iron gate at the end of the passage. He has also learned that the keys to the boathouse are guarded by a man and his dog. You shake hands, leave the room, and go your separate ways. Add 1 luck. Remember, you can't go higher than your base luck score, but if you had used luck in the past, it's now restored. Then it says to turn to 314. All right. Further up the passage, you see a door in the east wall. Listen hard, but hear no sound. All right, Dario, do you want to opt out or do you want to make a choice?
I'll make a choice.
All right. If you had opted out, we would be resetting buffer with the other 3. You're the last one. Hasn't been. So we want to make sure we have that logic in the system. That if there's only 1 left and they opt out, that it resets the buffer, but automatically puts them. Ooh, we're going to have a temporary exclusion for that. Well, we know that. We know that when somebody opts out, they need to be temporarily. Yeah, okay.
Just a note, we don't have anything in that wireframing for if everybody opts out.
If everybody, well, if everybody opts out, then it resets again because there's no way we can move forward. Thank you. We cannot move the turn-based. Well, I mean, I guess we could. I guess in the storyline, we would have to have, let's say, an NPC charging gets to attack first, right? Right. We have to make some logic. So do ahead and add a little thing in there that says if all opt out, that means they all hesitate. Right?
Do you want maybe like number 14?
No, it would be between
Let's get rid
it
of
would
the
be
general
inside
one,
that
see.
temporary, let's see, it would be the opt out. Oh, it would be at user opt out process 2 and user opt out process 5. So both of those need to come to its own sub process. If and the parameter is if all opt out. So both user opt out process 1 and user opt out process 2 come to that box within the texts of the line saying if all opt out. We'll have to clean that layup out. What I would probably do is make it go up out of the top of user output process 1 over to the left and around where the random user count, etc., and come around in on the left-hand side of the box. So that way it'd be less messy. You'll have to shift all of that down. You'll have to give it a little bit more space, but you got the idea. So, and then in that box, world or NPC takes automatic action. Or, all PCs hesitate, world/NPC automatic action. That makes sense to everybody?
I was just wondering in a non-combat if you don't just kind of rest, the equivalent of a rest, you like replay the turn
Good
over
point.
again?
That's a good point. So sometimes in a non-combat situation, there's still automatic stuff that happens. So, but we could put in there logic if no world action increment time, right? We'll have to have some time counter. Basically, increment time, and then we could say offer rest option or iterate back through choice. How's that sound? This
Sounds
is
good to
why
me.
we're role playing through this, is to come up with all these different uses. So that's a lot we just covered right there, which is good. Good job coming up with those use cases. That's what I hoped would happen with this process.
Hey, Hawk,
Yes.
or anyone really. Is anyone seeing number 7? The process, I've lost it. I don't see it. I might have deleted it by accident. I just don't see it.
Did we accidentally jump a digit?
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah, right out.
Oh, there it is.
Random.
When I shifted stuff around, I forgot to move the other stuff
Sure.
first.
I'd move that user process 1 and user count opt out down a little bit, for room to count the top. All right, we'll fill in more of those details. God, I just lost track. What number were we at? Was it
314.
14? Thank you. Further up the passage, it should be farther. Physical. Oh, mercy is everywhere. Farther up the passage, you see a door in the east wall. Listen hard, but can hear no sound. All right, so Dario, you decided you did want to take action. We don't need to roll because you're the last one in the buffer. Do you want to open the door to investigate, or do you want to walk farther up the passage?
Walk farther up.
All right, we will jump to 300. On the east wall of the passage, you see another door, this time made of solid metal. Listening at the door, you hear the sound of tortured screams coming from within. So the buffer has been reset. 1, 2, 3, and 4 again. Anybody want to opt out?
Nope.
I'd
Before,
like to.
oh, who's that? Luke, you want to opt out again?
Yes.
I gotta get some water. I'll opt out. real quick.
Okay. He's like New York. He abstains courteously in 1776. New York abstains courteously. If anybody saw the movie 1776. New York was always abstaining. All right, so that's going to be a D3 instead. We got Valerie, Doug, and Dario. And it is Doug. So Doug is now in the exclusion buffer. And Doug, do you want to try opening the door or ignore this room and continue up the corridor?
I'll open the door.
We'll open the door. All right, we'll jump to 102. The door is not locked and opens. The room in front of you seems to be a small torture chamber with various torture devices around the walls. In the center of the room, two small hunchbacked creatures are having their fiendish way with a dwarf who is tied to a hook in the ceiling by his wrists. The two hunchbacks are poking and cutting him viciously with their swords. The dwarf lets out a final scream and falls silent, eyes closed. Captors make disappointed noises, look round angrily as if it were your fault that the dwarf has collapsed. All right, decision-making time. Luke, are you back?
Yes, I just came back.
Okay. So we've got 3 people, Valerie, Luke, and Dario. Anybody want to opt out?
No.
Okay. So between you 3, this time it is going to be Dario. Dario's now in the exclusion buffer. Dario, you have 3 choices. Close the door quickly and continue up the corridor. Draw your sword and try to fight the creatures. Stride over to the dwarf, give him a jab with your sword, and put on an evil laugh for the torturer.
Huh.
What alignment do you want to go with there?
You know, I'm sort of curious about that last one. I want to see how that plays out. Let's do the last one.
All right. So here's a question, because this is where we really can come into conflict with the group, the decision-making process.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you could have people who would be strongly opposed
Okay, yeah, of
to
course.
stabbing. How are we going to handle that logic? How do we, because the voting system I want to avoid, the tyranny of the majority voting system.
Right.
I have an idea.
Okay, I was gonna say, but is there a way to interject on a decision that people might be disturbed by? Go ahead.
I know, like, a good example, the best example I can think of is, like, like, in-party combat, where, like, you can choose to all just get into a brawl between each other, or you can just let the 2 people who are in the combat just settle themselves. You don't have to intervene.
Right.
Maybe it's by the choice of the actual player who is not in the
Well,
buffer.
This is where the game system choice we're making also makes it. We talked, remember, in the combat side, we're using the Dwaits system for initiative.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a case where we've got 3 choices. We've got fight, flee, or fake.
Fly.
Basically, fight, flee, or fake. And so this would, in theory, in our system, it isn't. It's a little different in this book. This is where it gets a little bit different. In this book, because they're charging or whatever, it's potentially combat decision time. So if we switch to combat mode, the individual players can choose not to participate, right? They now, once we're in combat mode, each PC gets their own actions. Remember, when we're non-combat, it's as a group. when we're in combat, it splits off to everybody gets to decide what they want to do, correct?
Yes.
So in this case, he's making a choice that could be, I mean, it's certainly a potential combat situation because that's one of the options, but it is definitely a moral trigger issue right here. So what we might want to do is at this point, when there is a decision that somebody says, I'm not, so let's say we go through this whole chain, but then somebody says, oh, you know what, even though I didn't opt out, or even if I did opt out, I don't want to participate in this task that this person has chosen. So it's an opting out of the action, right? Splitting from the group in that particular action.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to do.
So
You had an idea. I mean, you could potentially in the tool set give the idea to use a combat turn for alignment oriented things.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this could be like Doug said, like you could make it like we have two different options we prefer, like how many are more options, and it's up to the user to decide in the tool set. That could be a thing.
We should have ones that the choice is per user rather than per group. This would be a per user. That's right. That would be the easier way to do it. Is the default when it's just going down the corridors and stuff is group. It's by default group choice, right? And each person just opts out and lets the next person take a turn. And everybody's okay with it, right? But when it comes to a choice like this, where there's a moral issue or something like that, instead of it being a group selection, it switches to what does your character want to do? You're acting individually from the group. And it's not, what's that?
I was going to say, I think from a game designer point of view, that would be a really neat option to have.
Yeah.
To be able to set a turn to be
yeah
per player, even without combat.
And really, as I think about that, we probably should always have right after opt out, before it goes into, or no, let's see, right after user makes decision, before it goes back in. So come out the right-hand side of user makes decision. And create a little box process of, do any individual PCs object?
What about the other way around? If you do have a controversial, so like if I made this decision, you ask the other PCs whether or not they support it. So if they all do support it, then they go along. If not, then they're opted out.
Well, I think that's what this is so user makes game decision. Now all the others can have the option to object, basically.
Okay.
I think that's exactly
what go back into the opt-out process technically.
No, because they may have opted out before because they don't care. Now they may suddenly care.
Okay, so like there'd be another opt-out process, like user opt-out 3.
No, we don't want it to be that they have to click to opt out again if they've already opted out.
Okay.
It's a chance to object. Even if they opted out before, they can jump in and go, no, wait, I'm not okay with this. I didn't know you were going to make that kind of choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
That makes
So this is a last-minute break that you can ignore. They'll get a quick pop-out, object or okay, right? And everybody just clicks okay. But if they object, then we'll trigger, they get to make a separate action.
Is this good for now? Because
the 12 arrow needs to. We're gonna have to move that in a minute. Now we're gonna put below if any PC object. We're gonna have a decision diamond, or actually to the right of if any PC object a decision. Okay, and if no objections. That would be the arrow you're going to draw is where the ifs are going to. You don't have to put anything yet in there. So in the top of that diamond, you're going to have an arrow that goes back to where 12 is. That's going to be whatever number it's going to be, where 12 is. That If yes, it's going to come down and it's going to point to individual PC choices / actions. Right? But up till now, this is all group. It's not another diamond. It's just going to be a line that says if yes. And that arrow will point to off script, which is individual PC choices / action. Yeah, you get.
Where did that other arrow go? If yes.
Yeah, if yes, it's going to be to a process box, which basically goes off. It goes off. It's a separate thing. But if yes, switch to individual PC choice / action. Individual PC choice / action.
It won't let me fix that spelling mistake for some
Yeah.
reason. There we go. That's understandable either way.
Yeah. Okay. And then that breaks out into whatever. That'll be an off. That's its own process, which is related to the combat one, but not necessarily combat. Okay. So then have an arrow go from if any PCs object to the left hand of the diamond.
Mm-hmm. And then that's the input to that function.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then get rid of the arrow coming out of the top of user makes game decision. Then we need to change the numbers. So user makes game decision. We go to 13 for if any the decision diamond for.
That's 12. This would be 13.
Yeah, sure. 13. Then don't need the arrow.
Oh, sorry, I copied that by accident with it.
Okay, and then 14A and 14B. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And really, that if PCs object, that should be inside the decision diamond. That's what that should be.
I can fix that real quick.
Well, actually, okay, so 13 should be UI presents objection, yes, no option for all PCs. That would be 13. UI presents objection, yes, no button or choice. I don't want to say button. I want.
And what's it related to again?
UI presents objection, yes, no choice.
There we go.
There we go. There we go.
I'm going to push this to the Git real quick.
Before you do, for the if no under 14A, say if no objection.
Okay. Wait, if no.
Yeah, if no objection. And the line description towards 14B, if any objection. Not voting, it's if anybody objects. I think that's better than the tyranny of the majority. That way every voice has a chance.
Is that good?
Yes. Now you can save that and go ahead and push that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to leave because
yeah, I know we're
I have
we're
a
finished.
server playtest for another project. So
Oh, great!
I'm a scheduling nightmare. Sorry.
That's okay. I understand how it goes. But that's good. We made great progress on that. Don't you guys think? That was really good, productive.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot. Anybody else want to say anything before you go? Okay.
I need
Yeah.
the what decision number option we're on.
Oh,
'Cause the last I had was 300.
we
but
are
that's
on
not-
102. There were 3
Okay.
choices, and it was Dario's decision. We'll make that when we come back. So we're on 102. There are 3 choices, and Dario gets to the. Think.
Sounds good.
Well, actually, you already made the choice, but we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Still make the same choice because I want to make sure we discuss that.
Sounds
It,
good.
it brings up why this was important to add that.
Yep, I agree.
Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
See you next week. Thank you, Valerie. Yes, go ahead, Valerie. Let me go off. You need me off the air?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna post like an email chat to the group. I just need you to approve it once it's done, just as a reminder that we're meeting again and what to bring to the next meeting.
Perfect. Is this to the whole list or just to the ERPG dev?
Just to the ERPG dev.
Okay, I just need to give you permission so that you don't have to get permission. I'll add that. I'll go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do it,
Okay.
and I'll moderate it. But then I'll also add. That'll remind me to give you more permission so you can just post.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
And remember, RPG Research is a 501c3 nonprofit research and human services organization studying the effects of all role-playing game formats for their potential to improve lives around the world. If you would like to donate, go to rpgresearch.com/donate. If you'd like to volunteer, go to rpgresearch.com/volunteer. Wherever you may be well, happy gaming, and Damapie. Are we gonna have to make just a little clip that just comes in every time at the end? Just you just popping in like that?